Thanks for opening your garden gates to us, and right now we're going to be talking about protecting your wildscapes and your Texas plants from invader species from beyond. I'm joined by Kelly Bender from Texas Parks and Wildlife. Kelly is a wildlife biologist and a guest on the program in the past. Welcome back.
Well, it's great to be back. Thank you for having me.
We're celebrating the release of your new book, which has just come out about wildscapes for Texas, and terrific production. Thank you for the work and for what looks like a terrific resource for Texans.
Well, thank you so much. We spent a lot of time on it, updating it, making sure it had the best available information, and it really helps gardeners put together a garden that includes food, water, shelter, and space, those things that wildlife needs.
Yeah. And to me, that's the greatest pleasure I get from gardening is the bird species and the visitors that we get, the butterflies. To me, that's really the biggest payoff in the garden.
Absolutely. I kind of feel like in my garden it's incomplete if we don't have the whole cycle, the whole vision of what nature is. And so this book helps us by showing us what native plants you can provide that put out flowers and nectar and pollen and fruits and seeds and everything that wildlife need to survive in our urban oasis.
Right. Well, it's beautiful, and it's chock full with information, and I really do recommend it to everybody out there. Now, the last chapter in the book is focusing on our topic today, which is invaders, and there are a lot of plants out there from other places that don't have just a toehold in Texas. In some places they're just rampant. And what's the problem with this in regards to our wild spaces and our wildlife?
Oh, absolutely. A lot of those species were introduced through our gardens for ornamental use. And while we value them because they're pretty, and also because they do well just about anywhere, unfortunately that characteristic allows them to do well everywhere. Throughout the state. And the problem with that is that in order to have a good wildlife habitat that is helpful for all wildlife species, you need to have a diversity of plant species as well, because every plant provides a little different benefit. So just like when you're putting together a team, an athletic team or a work team, you don't want to have everybody who has the same skill set. You want to have people who have different skills that contribute and make a better team for the project.
Right.
But and in urban habitats or natural habitats out in nature, we need to have a diversity of plant species that have different strengths and provide different benefits as well.
Well, I know that we really are impacting. Every time I go hike in the hill country, for example, and I think I'm experiencing Texas.
Right.
Until I look at the plants beside the trail, and I see Ligustrum and nandina and all these species from Asia and other places that are overrunning the natives.
Oh, that's a fantastic point, because a lot of times we plant things that we know or that we've seen elsewhere because we know that they'll do very well. But in doing so, we take away the Texas that we kind of came here to experience. So that's an excellent point. It's a sense of place that we lose. And a lot of times, I tell you what, the best way to ruin a good hike is to understand exotic plants.
It's true.
Yeah, it is, because you'll go around to some of the natural areas here in Austin especially, and you'll see a thicket of nothing but Ligustrum, and all of a sudden this beautiful green place with a lake is just...
Yeah, I have to bite my tongue sometimes when I'm hiking with friends, because they're all be saying, oh, look how pretty everything is. I'm like, darn Ligustrums.
But that's a good realization to have, because once your eyes are open and you realize, this habitat isn't the best that it could be, and you wonder why all we see in downtown Austin are grackles and and rock dove or pigeon. When we start planting a diversity of wildlife, we can start to see a whole host of different species, even in downtown Austin.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about Ligustrum, the pigeons of the planet.
That's right. They're the pigeons of the planet.
Well, let's highlight a couple of these invader species. And I just mentioned Ligustrum. That's a huge plant family, sometimes called privets.
Exactly.
But bear fruit, which is the primary reason why they're so invasive.
Absolutely, and flowers. And a lot of times people use them as privacy shrubs. But the problem that they present is that nothing nothing grows underneath them. First of all, they'll invade an area, whether it's been disturbed or not. A lot of times, exotic invaders, they'll only come in if land is disturbed. But Ligustrum, and we'll talk about in a second, Chinese tallow, they both can get a toehold just about anywhere, even in really healthy habitats. So the problem is that nothing will grow underneath them. So they tend to like getting in the habitats that have streams and water. And so by having completely bare soil and then these very tall ligustrum trees, when you have rain or flooding or anything like that, the soil doesn't stay on the ground. It moves on down.
Right.
Yeah.
So all sorts of problems associated with that, obviously.
Absolutely.
Another invader, you mentioned tallow, and you know, I think of these in Central Texas being sickly trees. Now, anywhere east of here, I know they can quickly take over. In the hill country, I think of them as being chlorotic, et cetera, but they'll survive even with looking horrible looking disease. And
throw out a bunch of seeds, too.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, they do really well in our area, pretty much only along the river. Yeah, creeks and rivers, riparian areas is what we call them.
Yeah.
But just a little farther east, in Bastrop even, you start to see, and you know, when I was growing up in Houston, they were the prettiest fall color, and that's why they were planted. That was one of the reasons that they were planted, that along with industry and agriculture.
And they've taken over hundreds of thousands of acres down by the Gulf.
Absolutely, and they have changed areas that were wetlands into dry uplands in, you know, less than a decade. So wildlife that require a wetland, you know, they can't nest in Chinese tallow trees. So we do have some great alternatives to those species, though.
Right. One other invader to mention that I really want to zero in on, because I'm going to have to deal with this spring in my own garden.
Oh, yeah.
Chinaberry.
Oh, yeah, Chinaberry.
I hate this plant.
And it grows like crazy. And, you know, I'm going to tell tales out of school. I saw a neighbor who had dug some Chinaberries out from an area park and had planted them in their yard. And it just about killed me, because once you get them in, they're really, really hard to get out. Now, we plant them because they have really pretty fall color. They're yellow. But they've got these berries that cover the tree. They're kind of a sickly yellow, waxy kind of color berry. But they will take over an area, especially if it has any kind of water, in no time flat.
Yeah. Well, don't get me started on Chinaberry, but we do have, for almost all these plants, there are good alternatives.
Oh, absolutely.
And these are all natives, and a few that you wanted to highlight start with like Carolina cherry laurel, which is an East Texas native, but grows well here.
Exactly, it grows very well here, especially in the habitats that we're thinking about putting them, or where you might have put a ligustrum. So Carolina cherry laurel, it's an evergreen species, and it's a small tree or a large shrub, and it acts a lot like a red-tip photinia or a ligustrum or privet, and it's a great alternative. It produces fruit, which is great for fruit-eating birds like thrushes and things like that. So,
yeah, mockingbirds, etc.
Oh, they love it. They absolutely adore it.
Yeah. So Carolina cherry laurel. On your list is one of my all-time favorite garden plants for Austin, and that is the desert willow.
Oh, absolutely. It's gorgeous. You know, if you're looking for something that's outlandishly ornamental, just gorgeous, looks like it comes from Central Asia.
Right.
Try the desert willow. It's got these big trumpet-colored flowers, trumpet-shaped flowers with purple and white and pink and different colors. You mentioned there are a couple of different cultivars.
There's the one that I was crazy about is brandy, and I think that's actually probably a pretty good description for the color.
Oh, absolutely. And it's fine with drought. You know, we've had such a horrible drought this past summer, but it does very well. But anytime it rains, it'll shoot out just a gorgeous display of blooms.
Yeah, and
I love them.
Often just summer long. You know, even in drought, summer long.
Really?
In my garden, and unwatered, just terrific plant. And butterfly attractor, hummingbird attractor.
Butterflies all over it all the time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. One last plant, just as an alternative to some of those real invader vines, coral honeysuckle is a good choice.
It really is. You know, it's a very well-behaved vine, and you don't. I mean, anybody who's ever tried to grow wisteria or trumpet vine, wisteria being an exotic invader, Chinese wisteria being an exotic invader. knows that sometimes they can get a little aggressive.
Yes, right.
But coral honeysuckle is fantastic. If you were to make a flower that was specifically for hummingbirds, this would be the flower for it.
Absolutely glorious, a beautiful color, one of my favorite colors in all of the garden, in fact. So, Kelly, again, the book is called Texas Wildscapes, Gardening for Wildlife. And we really appreciate you coming on and sharing this information about the invaders, because this is something that is a particular thing that I think people really need to pay attention to. We're often the guilty culprits introducing these species to our wildscapes, and we need to take a little more ownership in this and sense of responsibility. So thanks so much for coming back on the show, and continue best wishes. We'll have you come back and talk more about all the cool things about gardening for wildlife in the future.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Great. Well, coming up next, it's our friend Daphne.